welcome back to Sustainability Spotlight. I'm your host Lavanya, and today we are diving into the world of plastic recycling with a true expert. Joining me is Paolo Glerean, Head of Sales and Marketing at Aliplast Spa and Chairman of RecyClass. Paolo has over 23 years of experience in plastic recycling and has led R&D efforts in the field. Paolo, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here.
All right. So let's address the elephant in the room already, without waiting for us to get comfortable. So, despite all the discussion around plastic recycling, Paolo, recycling rates still remain low. What's missing, and what are the biggest roadblocks? Does the industry need better standards? Is it stronger incentives, or is it something else entirely?
Let's say that we are progressing quite a lot, of course, but probably this is a bit behind the scenes, of course. And this is to say that, especially in Europe, that I guess is probably the world area which is leading in this particular argument. So, if you think that just in the last 5 years' time, the plastic recycling capacity more than doubled, which means that we moved from kind of 6 million tons of installed capacity mechanical recycling, we moved to over 12 million tons. So in just 5 years' time. So then this is real, I would say, a kind of boom. But of course, this does not mean that, of course, there is the same, I would say, booming effect also on the quantity of recycled plastics, because I mean the final, I would say, figure of plastic recycling is coming from four different basically drivers. The first being the design for recycling, of course, of the item. The more recyclable, the more, I would say, efficient recycling is. Of course, when you design these goods in a proper way, you need to collect them, you need to sort them properly in specific streams, and then, of course, you have to send them to a proper recycling facility. This is to say that these four drivers are moving in a good, I would say, in the right direction, but they are not all moving at the same pace. So then the last one, so recycling capacity, has shown this big move. Design for recycling is also progressing quite a lot, and I hope and I guess that RecyClass is giving a good, I would say, support in this path. Collection sorting are still doing something, but probably not moving at the same pace, and this is of course limiting the end effect of this booming increasing of installed capacity in plastic recycling. Let me say that also the this plastic recycling industry is also facing some, I would say, troubles that maybe are just momentary troubles. But I mean, I would say that the regulatory landscape is pretty clear, especially in Europe. But of course, there are market conditions which are creating maybe some kind of stop and go. If you think about the energy crisis we suffered from in Europe, and also if you think about the competition of very low prices of virgin polymers, and also the even low prices of imports from outside the EU with no traceability, or not, I would say, on the same level in terms of, I would say, condition and safety into the product. And so this is causing some, I would say, stop and go into the path to move to a higher recycling rate. And of course, in this extent, it will be very, very much welcome a further step in enforcing the current legislation in order to create, I would say, a kind of level playing field across the world, of course, and also in increasing controls just to stop a bit some kind of, let me call it, unfair competition.
Right, right. So definitely, I think competition and standards law across the world have to be the same for everyone to be on fair grounds and for this to really take shape. So could you share? You mentioned recyclass's initiatives a bit, Paolo. Can you share a bit more about them? And what are the key challenges that Recyclass is working towards to address within the plastic recycling space?
Yeah, first of all, RecyClass is a non-profit and cross-industry initiatives, which today is under Plastic Recyclers Europe. It started from Plastic Recyclers Europe, and the idea is to promote and to support the rest of the industry to advance on recyclability of items, and also on the same time supporting them with good tools to trace, I would say, the good origin of recyclates, and also the recycled content across all the different steps in the supply chain. And this is, of course, as you can imagine, these are two sides of the same coin. From one hand, we need more recyclable items to be to make more, I would say, efficient the entire plastic recycling and the circularity of plastic most of all. And of course, we need to have a good traceability from the origin to the end in order to ensure that when we talk about plastic recycling, there's real recycled content, is not just something that is not true, basically. What we started basically within PRE, Plastic Recyclers Europe, we started the idea of RecyClass more than 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, so it was 2014, we published the first online tool to support. It's completely free, of course, and still live today. And it's just to support companies in assessing in a very easy way the recyclability of their plastic packaging in classes that are going from A to F. And when we launched this, then we discovered in a very short time that there was a kind of a lack of knowledge about what the real recycling process in the real scale was. And then we got quite a lot of questions from especially big brands. And then we realized that there was probably a gap in terms of knowledge to be filled in. So then we started interacting quite a lot with these companies. Then we moved to a different scale, creating this RecyClass platform where we invited these brands and all the rest of the plastic value chain to join us and to share their respective knowledge in order to create more circular approach to plastic. So when you know what you have to do in order to be circular and recyclable, then of course you start first of all to get some real knowledge on the reason why you should do some design choices and you should not do other ones. At the same time, this is a kind of, I would say, company knowledge that every company is taking out from this source, and this is helping, of course, progressing through the circularity. The gap was there. I hope that we made a significant step in order to cover this gap, and we are receiving several feedbacks from members in this sense, which to me is a good thing. On the other hand, as I told you, we are working with some, of course, scientific methodologies in order to make more and more robust this assessment procedure, testing also innovations. For instance, when you create an innovation, you think that maybe this is a step ahead in the circularity of this plastic application, but unless you don't have a system, a robust system on how to test if this is true, yes or no, it's just your guess. We created these kind of methodologies, and they can open access to it, and they can get a full result just trying to understand if this is okay, if this is limited, compatible with current recycling, or maybe if there's something else to be checked. So this is to me a good piece of information which is available not for members only, is available for all the industry which is requesting that to us. And of course, the other side of the coin, as I told you, is this set of certification schemes that we created in order to trace the from the origin, so from the waste, tracing all the plastic recycling processes up to the recyclates, and then the use of the recyclates in all the supply chain up to the shelves with the final products. And on top of these two different certifications, we have the third one, which is certifying the recyclability of specific items.
Wonderful. So I would just like to point out to our listeners that to what Paolo said, that it's a free resource. Everybody can use it, and it's not just limited to members. If you have to check the recyclability or the circularity of your plastics, of your materials,
Yeah.
from innovation to the very end state. So this is great. And this, uh, Paolo, could you speak a little bit about whether you are getting garnering interests from manufacturers and users outside of Europe as well, because it's an open tool?
Yes, first of all, let me just specify that, of course, we are not a service company. We are, once again, a no-profit company. So the idea is to deliver the more knowledge to the industry. So if you basically assess access to the RecyClass website, you will find quite a lot of information available for free. Of course, when we are getting some submission for testing something, this is under NDA, and all the people involved is under personal NDA. So the full coverage in this extent. And but of course, I would say the technical outcomes are available for everyone. We have, of course, to thank all our members because they are financing this activity. There is an annual fee that they are paying. So we are having more than 110 members, which every year are paying a fee to basically pay all the testing activities and all the people who is working as a resident team into RecyClass. And to get back to your question, I would say that the free tool is having today more than 10,000 users, which are spread all around the world. It's not just Europe, because this kind of approach has been, let me say, checked, has been checked by in different countries, and of course, it's quite a very easy interface to be used. And of course, this is helping quite a lot also in spreading this kind of knowledge. So I would say it's not Europe only.
Got it. So I would say then this is actually a start of standardizing all the recycling and circularity practices, given that you have taken up. So knowledge dissemination is happening from one point source so that everybody's following the same principles and adhering to that. So that is great. And you mentioned about certification as well, Paolo. So in your view, and I've started to see a lot of people, especially a lot of companies in the Europe, starting to talk of RecyClass certifications. So, in your view, what are the main barriers for companies who are, attempting to do that, or thinking of doing that? What are the main barriers that are preventing them from obtaining RecyClass certifications?
So there are not that much barriers to me, meaning that is once again also is I used to call the RecyClass website and the RecyClass platform a kind of I would say a crystal house, so you can see through. You go into the website, you have the full list of all the certifications bodies which have been trained, and they also already passed an examination under RecyClass to be RecyClass auditors. And so then you have a full list, and then you can choose the certification body you want. You just refer to them and you start your procedure. So there's not that much, I would say, of barrier in this extent. Of course, this means that you should understand what kind of internal preparation you need to have. I mean, if you go for certification recyclability, of course, first of all, I would assume that you already performed maybe an assessment, a self-assessment with the online auction, with the online, sorry, with the online tool, and then this gives you basically a first glance about how your specific item is positioned, and then this is a starting point also for the auditor. If you move also to the other two certification schemes, which is the recycling process and recycled content, then of course you should be organized and ready to receive an audit, which means that, of course, you have to prove traceability. And this means that, of course, your internal procedure and your internal company organizations should be equipped for that. So you have to have a good segregation of the different batches. You have to have a good full traceability, I would say, inside the company. And then, of course, you will get audited, and there are good chances that you will pass the audit. Of course, if you just think that it's just something that you take by and you have it, that's the wrong approach. Is a pretty, I would say, robust certificate. All three are pretty robust certification schemes. We are not getting as RecyClass any, I would say, any money out of it. We are just getting a very small fee from the auditors just to manage all the paperwork, which have to manage for every certification. But we are not getting money for any certificate, which means that we are not interested in having so many. We are interested in having very robust audits in place with and every company which has been passing the audit. Then we know that this is a pretty robust scheme that they have in place.
Got it. So quality is what matters in terms of the work that you're doing. So,
If I may, there's one keyword to me that should always be in mind in every, I would say, actor in the plastic value chain, which is faith. So we have to give real data. We must build up a true, I would say, a relationship with the consumer and with the rest of the economy, because I mean we know that plastic is quite often and probably too much under attack. And if we just try to pretend with some lies to give some very nice, I would say, stories and words, but if this is a lie, this will create even a worse effect. So we must to be pretty reliable. So faith to me is really a keyword in the plastic industry, and this is exactly the reason why we built up very robust certification schemes.
right, right. So we can't take the chance of doing and failing, or making terrible mistakes that can cost a lot of reputational damage in terms of how we talk of recycling, because there's a um lot of bad slack and publicity that goes around about plastics already. All right.
Exactly.
So, Paolo, just before we end this, would love to hear, given that you've also had such an extensive career in plastics manufacturing as well, what steps or advice that you would have for industries and sustainability professionals to spearhead this change, to increase the use of recycled plastics and drive greater demand across the value chain.
That's a very good question. It's not an easy answer. Let me say this. Of course, every company is working with some specific, I would say, mandates, and the one is just to create value, the first one probably, but creating, I would say, economic value also more and more in the last years, also with a kind of ethic approach to this. And how can we combine good economics with good ethics? That's a very important, I would say, match. That's not always easy. Let me say this is a kind of a chicken and the egg situation to some extent, because of course if you always would like to buy everyday low price, probably in several cases you will not find good recyclates able to replace virgin materials cheaper than virgin primes, especially nowadays where price of virgin primes are quite low. And the reason of that is that recycling usually has some fixed cost that you can't compress, like collection, sorting, and of course I would say the real recycling process. These are things that you can't, I would say, squeeze. I would say under a specific limit. And of course, when the price of the low price of virgin prime comes to close to this set of fixed costs, then of course recyclates usually are not that much, I would say, interested in terms of procurement prices. And how can we move on in this extent? First of all, regulatory is helping quite a lot, because at least in Europe we've seen that with the plastic strategy and all it came out from that, I would say, framework strategy has created a real demand and has moved also ethics to a higher level. How can we improve then economics? Of course, chicken and the egg is to say that the higher the level of the design for recycling, the most, I would say, effective will be recycling, and the most convenient will be recycling, because low yields will be lower, quality of the product will be higher, so higher than the chances to replace virgin at lower cost. So then, if we really invest, and this is exactly what is included also in the PPWR regulation. So if we really increase design for recycling, we really increase collection and sorting, then at the end of the day, we spent all this money in order to get a more efficient cost, I would say, of the recyclates. Then also for companies, it will be more convenient to use recyclates instead of virgin prime. So this is for the economics. And of course, the better we do that, the higher the quality of the recyclates, so the higher the chances to replace virgin materials with no big drops into the performances. How we can get there It's not something that just one company, no matter how big it is, can do. In this extent, I think that a regulator like European Commission did must take the lead. So they did. So that, to me, the path is very clear. And of course, having said that, we have probably a good, and we will have probably a good piece of regulation that will help, I would say, the circularity of plastic. Of course, this must be enforced in terms of controls, otherwise, it will be just a very nice set of words on a piece of paper, but with no real effect. So, we really need that all these actions should be put in place, and also controls must be there in order to I would say, to give a kind of a reward to companies which are working in a proper way, and the other way, stopping the ones which are not playing fairly.
Right, right. So I think a regulator will have to take the lead, and then the market incentives, the market will follow, and then we will have the hope is of a future where the market is or the economies are working such that more recycling is incentivized, and that's the right way to go. So thank
Yeah,
you.
we have to be clear. We have to be clear about what it does mean incentive, because I'm a bit against I would say economic incentives, because when you incentive, it's okay. You stop incentive, then you get back to the past. To me, what should be the main rule of the regulator is to create the condition to make a specific industry, and in this case, the circularity in the plastic industry, sustainable, self-sustainable. Then you don't need to pay money. You have to create the conditions, then it will self-standing.
Right, right. So self-sustaining
Yeah,
market economy for circular plastics is what we need. Wonderful.
yeah.
Thank you for those insights, Paolo. And it's clear that as we move ahead in the journey of plastics recycling as an economy, we need transparency. We need to build faith. There has to be high level of ethics and high quality of data transparency and exchange that we have within ourselves, so that we are just giving out the we are just coming up with the best solutions, and it is not just makeshift that takes us back uh, or a few years of all the good work that we have been doing. So thank you so much for joining us today, Paolo. It's
Thank you.
it's been a pleasure having you on the show and learning from your extensive experience. I'm sure a lot of our listeners who are joining in from the industry or otherwise have learned a lot, and this will motivate them to look at their own materials and also look at the RecyClass website to get to know how you can also uh, get a certificate or start work in that direction. We will also add a link to the website um, uh, when this podcast is posted on various channels. So to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Sustainability Spotlight. Be sure to leave us a review and stay tuned for more insightful conversations. Until next time, stay green.